Bada bing, bada boom. Both of us being in Wichita, Kansas, you know what's going to happen at noon on Mondays, Mark.
Oh, yep. Although I won't hear it inside my building. So you're here in town today?
Yeah, yeah. I'm back. I got back yesterday. Well, I came back from the build event and I was home for one day. Got some stuff I'll fill you in on, and dealt with some stuff in town. I turned around and had to go back to Aquapalooza all within 24 hours of being home from the build event, which build was phenomenal. Got to get you to our next mastermind. A lot of people catch this on the replay or live in the group. So we are streaming the Top Agent Experts, guys. We got Mark Benefield here today on how to not be a sales robot, if I can get that out, the art of having a sales conversation. And so, Mark, your background is in, training, coaching, the development of those skill sets. I mean, you've trained all types of different industries, for many years. And then you've been dedicated to real estate since what year was that I got to meet you?
I don't remember the year, man, but it's been about 8 years or so now. So do the math. I don't know, 2018 maybe, something like that. 2016.
Yeah, 15, probably around in there. Yeah, 2015. Really probably got going up and going with Select Homes Coaching. We built a coaching program together. We've done a lot of stuff in a short amount of time, as you had, linked in with us back then. Since 2014, 15, really probably hitting the ground running in 16. You've become, not just an acquaintance or, somebody I work with, but obviously a good friend. And I've learned a lot from you over the years. I mean, as you probably, picked up a few things from me as well, but you definitely, you definitely have a big toolbox when it comes to the conversion, piece to this. And so I know a lot of people, have heard of you before, or, definitely know you or have coached with us. The cool thing about this is when I was at Build, I don't know, we're sitting there doing dinner with probably 50 team members with Top Agent Experts and partners and all that stuff. And I was sitting across from a lady that was one of our first coaching clients. And she didn't even know I was her upline or whatever. And she's been running with us, for 4 years now or something. And she got invited to Build by another partner out in Washington. And then she found out they were having dinner or whatever with us. And she actually sat right across from me at the table. And it was pretty exciting to hear her process.
Who was that?
Her name is Susan. I got her last name. I took a picture of her as well, and she, was telling me the dates and the months or whatever. I was like, you had to be one of the first 10 coaching clients. Just like shout out to Green Bay Greg, like he was my actual very first coaching client. What's that?
I said he was number one. Yeah.
Yeah, he's number one. The crazy part is Tanner, as his ISA, helped identify that guy, go through the hiring process with Greg. He's still the ISA, almost 8, 9, 10 years later, however long it is. And they've grown from a couple hundred sales to well over 500, built out client care department, resource center like we did. But to be in that position and be the very first coaching client, I thought that was, kind of, crazy this last year, speaking with Greg and getting caught up and, noticing it's still the same old crew, and then being able to meet her. And she said, they went on to sell like 34 houses her first, it was like 8 or 9 months of her being in that ISA position off of what she was able to generate. But then she quickly grew into an agent, Mark, and obviously has went on and done her own thing. But that kind of goes back to, if you catch a, fish for a man, whatever, you feed him for a day, but you teach him how to fish, or her, you're feeding for a lifetime. And, whoever used to be able to generate the leads or, make it rain per se, did control the business. And over the years, I've said that's not necessarily true, because you'll run out of cash, or not be able to make it through the cash conversion cycle if you don't have someone that can convert. So essentially, whoever can control the conversion is in control of the business, or it is the bottleneck to the business. And so this is one of my favorite topics. I mean, you've went on also to become an agent. You're selling a lot of houses. Your focus, obviously, and just personality profile types geared more towards the listing side of the business. And so I'm excited to, grab my pen and my piece of paper. Obviously, I'm going to be here for you. I'll probably have some questions for you, throughout this process. But, Mark is bringing us today some fire. I know it's going to be fire. It's been a long time since Tim and I have been on a Zoom, around anything. We'll just say coaching, conversion, presenting. So I'm kind of excited to see what you have, Mark. I'm going to kind of fall back and let you do your thing. But, Mark's out of Wichita, Kansas with me, big background in coaching and training. He helped build Select Homes Coaching, and, kind of the setup of how we ended up having the foundations class to the foundations class to the advancement classes, and how we broke out them courses and stuff like that. But what's going on in the world today, Mark? It's all yours.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. I mean, I appreciate it. It's so cool, to be back with EXP. I was with EXP for a bit. I wandered off and I came back for a lot of reasons. And one of those reasons was obviously you, but more importantly than you is, the network and the things that the network provides, specifically, top agent experts. There's a lot of players and top agent experts that I'm obviously personally connected to. There's a lot of people that are, maybe in your downline, but still are heading up their own sizable deadlines. Mike, of course, Mike Gerbeck, Blake Corey, folks who I've been connected with for, all those years that you just mentioned. Some of them were coaching clients, some were, consulting clients, or people that just, we got to know over the years. There's a lot of people that, might be on today or might get a whiff of this. And I appreciate them being here, but you're absolutely right. At my heart, I honestly believe that you got to teach people how to fish, man. If you don't, then you're from my standpoint, you're a lazy coach. If all you do is provide people with scripts and then stand back and say, figure it out, you're a lazy coach. If all you do is hand people leads and don't teach them how to convert them and turn them into something, then you're a lazy leader. So I'm not about being lazy. I'm about doing the hard work, making the mistakes, going out there, trial and error, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, refining it, getting better. But more importantly, you got to have somebody you're bouncing that stuff off of, and help and direct you. So what I hope to be able to do is give people some things to think about. If you've been on some of my sessions before, you know that I'm all about, about pain, finding, the deep-seated emotional needs to move forward with making a decision. And, whether you're trying to convert somebody from a phone call into an appointment, or an appointment to a listing, or listing into a sale, then, you've got to get people to make decisions. And the best way to make people make decisions is get to the heart of the emotional connection that they have with whatever this problem is. So that's the direction that we're going to go. So hold on and, put your seatbelt on, because we're going to take a little ride here. First of all, I want to talk about sales phobia. The death of a salesperson, the number one thing that will cause you to not be successful as a real estate agent, as a salesperson. I'm going to use those two terms interchangeable, because I hate to tell you, if you're an agent, you're a salesperson first and foremost. And the first thing that you need to do is you need to come to grips with that. You need to come to grips with the fact that you are a salesperson, whether you like it or not. You could say you bring dreams or help people find their dream home, or blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, you're taking people's problems and providing them with solutions, and that is the heart of sales. Need for approval, though, will kill you. A lot of people come into our business with no background in a sales environment. A lot of people come into being a buyer agent first because somebody told them, oh, you're really good with people. There's nobody you ever met that you didn't like, or didn't like you, or whatever. And so they go into this world, they don't realize they have this huge need for approval. And a lot of times what that turns into is a sales phobia, meaning they don't want to look like salespeople. They don't want to sound like salespeople. They don't want to be perceived as pushy like salespeople. They don't want to, all those things that people associate with a salesperson. They don't want to be that, which is good. I don't want to be that either. What I hope to be able to do by the end of our little session here today is set you on that path of not acting, sounding, or smelling like a salesperson. You need to be one, but doesn't mean you got to sound like one, because let's face it, people don't like them a lot. So we need to find a different way. So a lot of people have sales phobia, and until you get over this sales phobia, you're never going to be as successful as you want to be, right? First of all, one of the things that kind of will telegraph whether you're sales phobia, or are you more worried about making friends or setting appointments? And what do I mean by that? Am I going to call somebody today? Am I going to ask them the tough questions that need to be asked? Or am I going to dance around it and just ask nice little, easy questions, so I don't make anybody mad, right? So what if you make mad? I don't know where you live, but I went by a sign. I was out running. I was out by Cheney Lake this weekend. And as I was running, I ran from Kingman County into Sedgwick County. I was running 22 miles that day, by the way. And I saw the sign, Sedgwick County, population 524,000. That means just in Sedgwick County alone, there's over 500,000 people. If you put Butler County along with that, and Sumner County nearby, and Cowley County, we got about 800,000 people in the metro area. I'm worried about making somebody mad. I'm not out to make people mad, but I tell you what, if you had a good friend, would you rather them ask you the tough questions to see whether you can help them, or would they prefer that you ask the easy questions that might make somebody, that won't make anybody mad because you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings? No, the way you win by asking the questions that need to be asked. Now you need to learn how to ask them, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. We're going to talk about softening statements and reversing and finding pain, etc. But you need to make sure that you're willing to ask the right questions so you can figure and determine whether or not you can help this person. Another thing that works into sales phobia is, are you focusing on your need to be liked or on your prospect's needs? It goes hand in hand with the one in front. Are you trying to make friends? Are you focusing on your needs, your need to be liked, or are you focusing on the prospect's needs to be helped? Because sometimes I have to ask tough, penetrating, personal questions. I have to ask you money about your finance, about your pre-approval. I have to ask you about your credit. I got to maybe ask you about your health. I got to ask you about all kinds of stuff. I got to, whether you're married, whether your girlfriend is your spouse, whether you got a girlfriend and a spouse. I got to ask you all kinds of tough questions in the right way with the right tonality. But am I focused on my need to be liked? Like, oh man, I don't want to say this because this person might be mad. Or are you going to focus on your need to help somebody else? That should be your driving factor. Focusing on your needs enhances your fear of rejection. When you're worried about yourself and your needs and how you feel about it and whether or not you're going to be liked, that's going to enhance and feed into your fear of rejection. That's going to feed into your sales phobia. What you need to be able to do is you need to be focusing on the needs of the customer that drives this transaction forward. The needs of the customer that are going to drive this transaction forward. So, in summary, are you more worried about yourself and your need to be liked, or are you more worried about helping your customer and your client out, right? Well, obviously you should know the answer right there. We should be focused on the needs of our customers and not on ourselves. And sometimes that means we got to take a risk. And sometimes that means we might ask a question that's too tough. Sometimes it might make somebody a little uncomfortable, but guess what? The uncomfortableness at the end of the rainbow is where the pot of gold is. You will get uncomfortable way faster than your prospect will ever get uncomfortable. Remember that. You are going to get uncomfortable way before your prospects are going to get uncomfortable. And here's one way to deal with that. All you have to do is call it out. If you feel it, say it. Hey, Bill, I'm sorry, but I'm feeling uncomfortable, but I need to ask you a question. And I hope that you won't get mad at me about it, but I think it's an important question directing us where we need to go. Can I ask you an uncomfortable question? Boom, done, problem solved, problem over. In it, they're going to say, go ahead, no problem. They're going to answer your question and get right where you need to go. Don't worry about your need for approval, folks. Ask the tough questions, because I'm going to ask them. And if you live in here and you're up next to me, I'm going to win and you're not going to win, because I'm going to ask the tough questions. Are you listening to yourself too much? Excuse me. Are you listening to yourself too much? What do I mean by that? It says your customer is talking to you about his needs and concerns. Are you listening intently? Are you absorbing the information, that you're seeking to understand? Or are you talking to yourself about what bills you got to pay that day, what your family going to need, or how bad you need to get an appointment set with this guy? Are you stressing about that? Or are you intently listening to what it is they're saying? Your customer told you that you want to move to Seattle, right? Looks like I got to plug my computer in, folks. Your customer just told you in a conversation that they're moving and they need to move to Seattle. Are you thinking to yourself, Seattle, that's an interesting choice. I wonder why he's moving to Seattle. Maybe I ought to ask that question. Why are you moving to Seattle? Or do you happen to live in Seattle and you're thinking of, I wonder what price range he's looking in. Price range doesn't mean anything. People, if the problem is big enough, people will find the money. The problem is big enough. If they need more money, they'll borrow more money. They'll go to their parents for money. They'll go to their grandparents for money. They'll tap into their IRA. They'll tap into this. They'll tap into that. They'll sell something. They'll do whatever they got to do to make their problem go away. Don't worry about the money right now. You got to find out and connect with them at a different level. And where I need to find out, connect with them is why Seattle? Why choose Seattle? Right? Maybe they live in Puyallup, which is south of Seattle, and they just got a job on the north end. You know what? I was just in Seattle a few weeks ago. I know all kinds of people who live in Puyallup and commute all the way to the north end every single day. They don't buy a new house. Why is it important for this person to buy a new house? Why instead most people just go, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'd probably want to move too. I want to be closer. Well, why? Why is that important? Are you thinking about yourself and what you would do? Or are you thinking about why it's important to this client? What does a commute mean to them? Does that mean they miss out on anything at home? Does that mean they miss their daughter's dance recital? Do they ever miss dinner? Is it taking a toll on, is it stressful for them? Why? Don't be afraid to follow up and dig in deeper. Are you more concerned that you might ask a question that might offend them? Or are you trying to get to the bottom of the situation and why it's important for this client to move forward? Because that's the difference. The difference between a buyer-broker agreement that lines the floor of your trash can or one that turns into an agreement to buy a home is the difference between you finding out why and connecting and bonding with that level, or you just simply going on and asking what the price is that they want to spend. Here's what you need to do. You want to get rid of your sales phobia. You want to have great conversations with people. You want to ask really good penetrating questions to help qualify this prospect to get to the need and find the pain. The first thing you need to start thinking about right now is say it with me. I am financially independent and I don't need the business. I'm financially independent and I don't need the business. I'm financially independent and I don't need the business. Because if I was truly financially independent, would I listen to a lot of wishy-washy BS, or would I ask tough penetrating questions if I didn't need your money? See, the problem with a lot of us is you need the money. You need the money of that prospect. You don't have anything in your pipeline. You haven't been prospecting. You haven't been converting. You got one guy on the line and you got to sink your teeth in it like a dog with a bone. And you're scared to ask a tough question because if you said one, you might make him mad and they would leave. And then you wouldn't have squat. So you need to start thinking right now that you're financially independent and you do not need the business. And if you're not financially independent, you need to become a great actor. That doesn't mean go out and buy a new BMW when you can't afford it and drive it around. That means in your mindset and your thought process, I'm financially independent. I'm asking the tough questions today because that's what financially independent people do. They don't waste their time and mess around with nothing that's going to happen. They get to the point. That doesn't mean you got to like drill somebody between the eyes. It means I got to find a way to get past my phobia of being liked and worrying about having and avoiding somebody or avoiding the problem. I have to be able to dig into them at a level that a financially independent person would ask. Let me tell you a story. Many years ago, I used to have a sales training company called Strategic Growth Solutions. And it was the day after Christmas, and I set a meeting up with a company called George Lay Signs, and I have a meeting with the owner, George Lay, to talk to him about doing sales training for his sales team. I drive up, and first of all, I made the appointment with him. I made sure he was going to be there, and I said, George, are you sure you're going to be in the day after Christmas? Most owners are gone. Are you sure you really want to meet that day? And he said, yeah, I want to meet that day because that's when everybody's gone and I have time to sit down and actually think and talk to people with nobody here. Great, I'll see you day after Christmas. I pull up in the parking lot literally right to the front door. My phone rings and I look down at it and it's American Express. Now this company was very young. I only had this company for a few months. I looked down at American Express, I answered the phone, and guess what? I owed American Express some money. And the lady was like, Mr. Benefield, I'm sorry, but we've had to, we're going to have to cancel your account unless we make, unless you pay us $5,700, in the next 24 hours. And I said, ma'am, I know you've probably heard this before, but I don't have time to talk to you right now. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into this appointment. And then when I come back, I'm going to be able to pay you the money that I owe you. Right. So I know you probably think I'm never going to call you again, but I'm going to call you again. So I hang up, I walk in there. I now have to stand in front of George Lay, knowing I just got my American Express turned off if I don't turn in $5,700. And I got to sit there in front of him and ask him tough questions and act like I don't need his money. I did a great acting job that day. I walked out of there with a check for exactly $6,000, which I paid $5,700 to American Express and $300 I took home. Now, you talk about want to make your backside pucker up a little bit. You walk in someplace and you got to make some money right then and there, and you got to act like you don't have to do it, right? You got to act like you don't need the guy's money. Because when you I would want your money. I would like to have your money. But when I need it, then he owns me. When I need it, he can tell me anything. When I need it, I'll do and say anything, right? Not personally, but some people will do that. When you need somebody's money, they own you. When you want it or you'd like to have it, two completely different things. Never be in a position to need. Want is a lot different, but you have to act like you're financially independent. That is going to push these fears down, because I'm going to act like I have the money, and therefore I'm going to act tougher, more penetrating questions, and my confidence is going to be higher. Are you too robotic in your approach? A lot of people I work with are very robotic, and I blame real estate for that. Right? Because in real estate, what happens is we got a whole bunch of high D guys, high type A personalities. They've written a bunch of scripts and they're all over the internet, and you can find them when you want, just like when I started, right? And they give you these scripts and they expect you to be able to say what they say, even though you don't have the same personality, right? They may be on a disc profile, they may be a high D and you're a low S. A low S is not going to pull off acting like a high D for very long, because they're going to be in role conflict and they're not going to be able to do it on a regular basis. They're going to be burned out. You're going to take somebody who's super high I and try to get that super high I to read the words that a high D wrote. You're not going to be able to do it for very long, because you're going to be in role conflict. You're going to get burned out and you're going to quit. Right? So they become very robotic. They start saying things they don't believe. They start saying things because other people told them to say them, even though they don't have the same life experience. They don't have the same background. They can't pull it off. What you need to learn to do is to have a conversation with people. You need to learn how to talk to people like they're your next door neighbor. You need to talk to like it's Larry over at the mailbox on Saturday morning, when you're out cutting the grass and he's waving to you and you walk over to have a chat, right? You need to understand that a conversation isn't part of a sales process. It is the heart of the process. You need to focus on conversations, not on your selfish need to find out if the prospect is talk to a lender. You need to focus on a conversation, not on your selfish need to determine the price range. You need to focus on the conversation, not your selfish need to move quickly through the process. You know what? Is your job to make 100 phone calls? Or is your job to talk to 10 people a day? I don't know how many times I've talked to an agent, but I just can't, I'm talking to Betty, man, that call took 20 minutes. I can't have calls make 20 minutes. I'll never get through all my calls today. I don't care if you only make 3 calls a day. If you set up 2 appointments, you got Betty. The reason why I make 100 phone calls, it takes me, at a 30% drop rate, it takes me that long to talk to 10 people. I just want to talk to the people. And as I'm talking to the people, I'm going to work some of these conversations in about, whether they've talked to a lender, what price range they need to be in, and go for the appointment. But I'm not going for an appointment in the first 3 minutes. Why? I just need to find this other human being as they are and connect with them. Think about the last thing you bought. Was it because somebody tried to sell it to you really fast, or because they took time to understand who you are, what your needs were, and what direction you were going? Now, I know some of you are saying right now, well, I'm already good at that. Well, then you can get off the call right now if you don't think you can get better. If you're already as good as you possibly can be, you can't learn anything, and I got nothing for you, then go ahead and go to lunch, right? Because, we're all wasting your time. But I don't think that's the case. A lot of us can get better if we take the time. If you sold 100 this year, maybe you can sell 120. If you sold 30 homes this last year, maybe now you can sell 45 if you learn a few things and get a little bit better at what you're doing, become less transactional and more relational. We need to focus on our client and not our own needs. Will we get information? Absolutely. Can we get information through a genuine conversation with them? You betcha. Let me tell you a story real quick. I'm going to tell you a story about root canals, getting married, hurricanes in Charleston, stepkids, and a litter of pigs. So I'm just going to tell a little story right now, and then we're going to have a little test afterwards. Okay. So about 15 years ago, I had to have a root canal. And I was in a lot of pain. It's like a cartoon level pain, right? I mean, my whole head was throbbing, was pounding, was bouncing around here or there. And I had to go get this root canal. And I got this root canal. And this was in the days before they were just piecemealing out, pain medication. Now it's so controlled. The maximum you can get is a 3-day supply. Well, then you could, you'd leave there with a bottle of Vicodin, right? And with a refill for another bottle of Vicodin. And so I had to have this root canal, my upper right-hand tooth up here, my upper right molar. And I went down and I was in a lot of pain. I got that Vicodin, which was really cool because the 2 days after I had that root canal, right, I went to Las Vegas for a conference. I went to Las Vegas, and that was one of the best conferences I ever attended. It was actually at the Computer Electronics Show, CES. Some of you may be aware of that show. And it was really interesting because I don't know about you guys, but vodka and Vicodin make for a really good time. Now, I don't suggest that. And kids, if you're listening, don't follow Mark's direction on this. But getting a root canal done 2 days before going to Las Vegas and spending the rest of the week on pain medication and cheap vodka drinks really makes for a interesting trip. Right about that same time, though, the weekend before I was supposed to go to Las Vegas and I was supposed to get this root canal was I met this young lady and her name was Joy. Well, interestingly enough, I went to this conference, and while I was there, I was kind of, chatting with her back and forth, sending text messages, and we kind of got to know each other a little bit over that week. And when I came back, we started dating. And it's now basically 13 years later, almost 14 years later, and we're now married. And Joy's a tremendous person. She's an executive level nurse, and she specializes in Alzheimer's care and memory care. She works for a really large health network, and she manages and supervises memory care things across the country. Right about that same time, this was probably 10 years ago. Maybe a little bit less than that. I was going to another conference, and it was in Charleston, South Carolina. And Adam should remember this because he was actually there. It was really interesting because we got to this conference, and I was there maybe 12 hours because the moment we landed, they had a hurricane warning, and a hurricane was coming directly at Charleston, and they shut down the city. We were for a Boomtown conference, and they shut down the city, and everybody had to get out of the city. I was able to get one of the very last flights out. However, Adam and our friend Brian Brundage, and I think there was somebody else, they didn't listen to me, and so they got stuck there, and they couldn't get a flight out. So I think they had to drive to like Georgia and then Tennessee. Who knows? It was some sort of odyssey that they took like a couple of days to get back. Meanwhile, I'm chilling at home. I think one thing I forgot to mention a moment ago was, I married Joy during that same time when this was all going on. And I actually dated her for 6 years. And one of the reasons why I dated her for 6 years because she had 3 young children that are now my stepdaughters. There's 3 of them. There's Dakota. She's 19. Ariana is 17, and her twin sister Sam is also 17. So I'm going to stop right there. I'm just curious, without going back and listening, who can tell me, and if you're listening right now, if you're live, you want to throw it in chat, who can tell me, how long ago I got married? I didn't mention where, so you can leave that off. What side of my mouth was the root canal on? Maybe you heard that, pick that up. How many hours was I in Charleston before I had to leave? How old are Joy's children? How many new pigs will there be? I'm just curious, if you're listening to this call, if you happen to be live, just curious if you could answer those questions. Now, you didn't know where my story was going, but were you really listening, or were you wondering, why the hell is he talking about this? Were you saying to yourself, why is he telling us about Charleston? Well, who cares about Vicodin? I wouldn't take that much medication. I mean, how well did you follow along? And were you really invested in this conversation, wondering where I was going? Or were you too wrapped up in what you were going to be having for lunch that day? How many times did you pick up your phone and look at it while I was talking? How many times did you look over and maybe check some email while I was talking? Do you do those same things when you're on the phone with a client? Maybe not overtly on your phone, but have you checked out? Are you really invested in this conversation? Are you being relational? Are you being transactional? Or are you just hoping to get to the next point so you can ask them the next question, LP mama? You're like, so what location would you like to live in? Right? What price point are you hoping to find a home in? Right? Do you have an agent? Have you been pre-approved? Are you thinking about what the next letter in LP mama is? Or are you wondering about, gee, I wonder why Mark dated her for 6 years? Hey, how come they were in Charleston? Right? What else have you done from that root canal? Have you had other root canals before? Those would all been appropriate questions, but I doubt that most of you would have asked any of those questions. You would have listened to me and then went on to what your question is, regardless of what I had to say. Right? I saw a great TED Talk one time. And the basis of TED Talk, I can't remember the woman's name. She's a PhD, and she specialized in auditory stimulation, and she specialized in having conversations with people. And she said, all those techniques that they teach you in school about how to do active listening, when you shake your head and you rub your chin and you paraphrase back. She basically said, you know what? That's all bullshit. Because if you're really listening to somebody, you don't have to shake your head and rub your chin and parrot it back. Because when you're really listening, all that stuff comes natural. If you have to act like you're listening, you're not really listening. Get out of yourself, get out of your selfish needs, and get into the needs of your prospect. Fair? Are you stuck? Unfortunately, a lot of real estate and what a lot of you have been taught is stuck in a 1970s communication model. You hear great stuff like, if I could show you a way, would you buy this today? And I still hear people teaching this baloney now, and it makes me sick. Most sales training and most salespeople are stuck in a 1950s communication model and using 1970s tactics. What do I mean by that? Back in the 1950s, they were writing books about sales, and it was qualify, present and close, qualify, present and close, qualify, present and close. And most of you are still stuck in it. Heck, some of you are even an 1890s model where you're presenting first, and then you're qualifying, and then you're closing. Some of you aren't even qualifying. Some of you will leave your office today with your listing presentation in your hand. You're going to go out and meet with somebody. You don't know anything about them. You don't know anything about their background. You don't know anything about them whatsoever, but you're showing up because you're going to give a presentation. You don't even know if they want to list their house. You don't even know why. You don't even know who they worked with before, how they choose you, how they chose you, what their circumstances are. But you're going to give a presentation filled with all the stuff that somebody absolutely needs to know to make a decision. And you're saying, but Mark, I've been successful. Yeah, you probably couldn't be more successful. You couldn't be better at what you're doing, right? Sure, maybe you're good at 1950 sales tactics. Well, what if you brought some 2023 sales tactics in? Right? Maybe you could do something a little bit better. People want to buy, folks. They just don't want to be sold to. We need to learn how to communicate and have great conversations. We can't get stuck, and we can't use these models that are 50 years old. Some of you have learned some 70s, some late 60s, 70s, models, like maybe from, Xerox, or, maybe some of those types of trainings back in the day, right? Where you qualify first, right? You do a consultative selling. Most of you think you're doing some sort of consultative selling, and that's when you're going to go out and you're going to ask them things like LP Mama, right? Because I want to be a consultant, want to find out what their needs are, how much they can spend. And the reality is you're just giving lip service to it because you're not really. I'll give you another example. I love stories, right? Many years ago when I started this other business, I had the local radio station called me. And they said, hey, we heard about your new business. We'd love to be able to come talk to you, show you how we can, learn about your business. Show how we might be able to help you promote your business and help more sales. I'm like, cool. So they send two young ladies over to my business. They sit down and they did an excellent job. We went in a conference room and they spent an hour just asking me questions about me, about my business, how I got into it, what my background was. I felt really good because, they asked me questions about me, right? And I told them at the time, I own a franchise, and the franchise has a very specific way to do radio advertising. They have a way to buy the advertising, when we should set it up, the hours we should set it up, the topics we should cover, and they do a very good job of it. And they say, fantastic. Why don't we set up our next meeting, right? And come down to our radio station, and we can show you around the station, and we can sit down and go over, the plans that we put together based on, the needs and things that we found out today. So I go over there. First of all, I could care less about walking around the radio station. What are you going to show me? Here's a cubicle. Here's a cubicle. Don't give people tours of your office. When you give somebody a tour of your office, who is that meant for? Is that meant for you and your selfish need for their approval? Or do you think they really care about your office? They may walk in, let's put it this way. If they don't say, hey, could you show me around your office? Just take them in the conference room and sit down and get to work. They don't care. Keep telling yourself they do. They'll be polite, but they don't care. You save the time, right? So we go into the conference room finally, and they bring in some cold Mexican food or whatever it is that they brought in. They put up this PowerPoint, and they spent the next 45 minutes telling me everything that they would do, and what I wanted to do was wrong. They put together this budget. My budget was like $1,200 a month. They put this campaign budget that was going to cost me $17,000 to begin with for the next 90 days. And it was like $8,000 a month or whatever it was. They didn't listen to a damn thing that I said. Sure, they went through a needs analysis. Sure, they did a consultative process. The problem was they didn't listen to anything I said whatsoever. Sound familiar? Are you doing needs analysis and not listening? Are people telling you what they're willing to buy and you're trying to talk them into something else? No, they need to listen. Find out what people are willing to buy and sell that to them. Don't get commission breath and keep trying to kick them higher and kick them higher and kick them higher. Let them be the determining factor of that. Right? They didn't listen to a word I said. So consequently, I didn't do any business with them. This sometimes comes in the form of somebody wants to make an offer, but you don't want to write their offer because you know what? It might offend the listing agent. So what? I'm a listing agent. People write me low offers all the time. You know what I tell them? No, thank you. You know, my clients tell them, no, thank you. It doesn't offend anybody. The only way you're ever going to get a deal done is if that deal's written on paper. If that deal's written down, now we got a chance to negotiate. Now, I know it's a personal philosophy, right? Sometimes you need to get a no so you can go back to your client so they can see in hard evidence why their lowball tactics aren't going to work. And the only way they're going to do it is when they see it happen 2 or 3 times, then they'll listen. So do you have a need to be right and say, well, I'm not going to make that offer because you're going to offend somebody? Make the offer. Let them tell no. You might be surprised. You might be surprised. I know I've got some deals where I had no way thought, oh, we would win that deal. We wrote it anyway. And guess what? We got that deal. So we need to learn how to communicate. We need to learn how to have tough conversation with people. Here's a reality. Most salespeople spend 5 minutes getting a sale and 25 minutes talking their prospects out of it. Yep. We talk too much. You talk too much. What is your purpose as an ISA or an agent or whoever? What is your purpose? Is your purpose to make a lot of phone calls? Or is your purpose to find pain and schedule appointments? To find pain and make sales? Are you listening for buying signals, or are you too busy trying to get your next LP Mama question answered? Salespeople talk too much. Some of you have probably heard about the 80-20 rule, Pareto principle, right? 20% of your business, or pardon me, 80% of your business comes from 20% of your clients, right? But have you ever heard of the 70-30 rule? Anybody know what the 70-30 rule is? Some of you might. If you've been through some of my training, you might know, right? But the 70-30 rule simply says this, right? 70% of the time your prospects should be talking, 30% of the time you should be talking. Think about your last sales interaction. Who did more talking, your client or you? Clients should be talking. That means you should be asking tough, penetrating, in-depth questions to allow the prospect to express themselves. You want to build trust with somebody? How do you build trust? Is it talking about the weekend golfing, or the fact that their kids are in softball too, or you used to live in Everett, Washington? That's not building rapport. You want to build rapport, you want to build trust with somebody? Let them disclose. Let them talk about themselves. Ask them questions about them and their needs and why they're there and what's important to them. The more somebody discloses, the more they trust you. The more they trust you, the more intimacy is built. The more intimacy is built, the more trust is built, right? You want to build intimacy and trust with somebody else, you need to ask really good, thoughtful, penetrating questions that you actually listen to and you follow up with. Prospects should be talking. If you're talking about yourself on a sales call, you are talking too much. This is not about you. It's not about your past experiences. It's about them and their past experiences. Let people wallow in their own BS. When somebody says, like, for instance, I had an air conditioner in my garage. Somebody needed an air conditioner and they posted on Facebook. I happened to notice it and I said, you know what? I got an air conditioner in my garage. You can have it. We DM'd each other back and forth. They said, how much you want for it? I said, you can have it. So she came and I met her in the parking lot today, and right before this call, about 30 minutes, and I gave her the air conditioner. And the first thing out of her mouth was, oh man, I had such a hard time getting over here. I had a flat tire today, blah, blah, blah. You know what? That's her experience. That's the moment she's in. And I said, I'm so sorry. I mean, do you need some help? Did you get that taken care of? Oh, no, I was able to get it changed. I just got to go, buy another one. This was so helpful that I got this air conditioner for free from you, because now I don't have to spend the money I budget. I can go get this new tires I need. I said, well, you know what? I'm so glad I could help you. Now, what most people would do, they'd be like, oh, you did? Oh, you know what? I had a flat tire last week myself. I was driving back from Colorado. We were in the middle of nowhere and I had a flat tire and we had to wait 3 hours for the wrecker to get there. And then we had to go to Walmart. You couldn't believe what a bad day we had. And just taking that person's thunder, man, and made it all about you. Who cares if you've ever had a flat tire before? They have one now. Focus on them now. Nobody cares about you and your tired tire story from 2 years ago, other than you and your selfish need to want to be more relatable and be worse off than they are. Focus on the prospect in front of you. I'm so sorry that happened. I'm sorry you're having a bad day. And what can I do to make it better? How can I help you? She had no idea that I had a flat tire on the way back from Colorado, because it's not relevant. When you're talking about yourself, you're talking too much. You need to focus on them and make sure when you leave a sales interaction, whether you're on the phone or you walk out of their house, the first thing you should say to yourself is, did I talk too much? Who talked more, them or me? And if you say to yourself that you talked more than 50% of the time, then you're talking too much. Over time, you can get better, make it 70-30. The less you talk, the more you listen, the better off you are. On an hour meeting, 30% of the time is still 18 minutes. 18 minutes of talking. That means the rest of the time you should be listening. Prospects should be talking, not salespeople. Selling is a process. Buyers move through the process on their own speed. Some move fast, some move slow. Your job is to recognize the buyer's process and pick up the subtle clues with changes in tonality, asking leading questions that you can ask the buyer, and then move on to the next phase. Or they just might say, I apologize. I wrote that comment there. And we need to make sure that we understand the clues that people are bringing us, what their changes in their tonality are, the types of questions that they ask and that we ask. Are you really good at finding people's signals? Are you? I don't know. I don't know a lot of people are, because a lot of people are trying to slam appointments. You know, when Adam and I had our ISA train company, when we first started Select Homes Coaching, we focused just on ISAs. And I would have these ISAs that would come in, and they would come from other industries, and they were so used to getting, they could get lots of appointments. My guy would come in and he would just hammer, man. First 2 days out, the guy was scheduled 10 appointments the first day and 8 appointments the next day. And then a week later, I'd call to find out how many people showed up, and nobody showed up for any of the appointments. Or maybe one person out of 18. They just couldn't figure out. I don't understand why. Because they were just talking people in appointments. People were just saying yes to shut them up. They're just saying yes to shut them up. They weren't actually asking and picking up on the clues and tonality. You know, setting lots of appointments does not impress me. But what your show ratio impresses me. If you set 5 appointments and 5 people show up, I'm impressed. You set 5 appointments and 4 people show up, I'm impressed. You show 5 appointments, 3 showing up, I'm not getting really impressed anymore. You set 5 appointments, only 2 show up, you got a problem. Which means you're just slamming people in the slots and you're not really listening or understanding anything about their situation. You know, it's not always be closing. It's always be listening. Anybody can close. Anybody can get a sale, a one-time sale. I need referrals. I need more sales. I need friends. I need family. I need work colleagues. I need people that that their kids are on a softball team with. I know kids that go to the soccer tournaments. I know people that need from the pool. I need all that stuff. You know how I do that? By really listening, connecting with people, right? Not by just slamming into appointments so they'll say yes and hope they'll show up. No, if your appointments aren't showing up, if you got less than a 75 to 80% show ratio, you got some things to learn. And you're thinking, well, I can't do better than that. Yes, you can. Because if you ask Adam to go back to the stat tracker and see what our numbers were when we were selling 1,000 homes a year, what those numbers of show ratios were, and they're about 80%. It can happen, and you can make it happen too, if you focus on them and less on yourself. You guys ever heard of the dummy curve? Probably not. There's this thing that happens in sales. And what happens is people are new. When you're brand new, you know what? You don't know anything. You're a brand new agent, or you're a brand new ISA maybe, and you don't know everything. And so if you have integrity, you're asking lots of questions, because you get a list of questions and you ask those questions, and you're going through the process, and you find some opportunity because when you don't know something, you're authentic and you tell them, I don't know, right? Let me find that out. Let me get back to you. But then what happens is you start getting some training. You start hanging out with some of the other people in the brokerage. You start going to brokerages. You start listening to some stuff on the internet, and now all of a sudden you're trained. You know all the stuff there is to know, man. You know all the buying, you know everything there. So what happens is you stop asking questions and you start talking. You start telling all these stories and doing all this and doing all that. And now it's all about you, and it's not about them anymore. What happens is the sales that you start out with start to decline and you go down. A lot of times this happens around the 6-month mark for some, or even the year mark. I had some initial success, but then all of a sudden I got nothing. And that's because you're talking too dang much. What you need to do to go back to a professional phase is you need to do what we call be a dummy on purpose, meaning I'm going to ask you questions even though I know the answer to them. It takes a lot of intellectual integrity to ask somebody a question and then shut up and listen, even when you already know the answer to the question, because what makes it meaningful and powerful is when the answer comes from that person's own mouth, not when it comes from your mouth. You can't anticipate everybody's objection and then handle every objection during the conversation, because if you do, they never get a chance to think through the process themselves. Right? You're too busy trying to handle everything. And what you should be simply doing is, well, why do you think that way? How do you feel about that? Where did that come from? Oh, you have some experiences. Let's hear about that. Tell me some more. No, you just want to show how smart you are. Once again, it's about your need for approval. Man, I need to show this person how smart I am. I'm going to tell them all the information I know. Nobody cares what you know. They want to know how much you care. Heard that before? Probably seen it on a wall somewhere, People don't want to know how much you care, or they don't want to care how much you know until they know how much you care. This is what we're talking about. This is how you have authentic conversations with people. But a lot of people are like, Mark, you know what? I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know how to keep this thing going. We need to open-ended questions, connect words. And I'm going to go into this chart right here, right? Most of you do know the questions to ask. You just have been never given the format. Look at old school. Still says Select Homes Coaching. This is a tool I use called the pain iceberg. Some of you may see a funnel, something like that, but the pain iceberg. And what are the reasons that people move? Maybe their house is too small. Maybe their job transferred. Maybe they hate their neighbor. Maybe they got a new job. Maybe they're trying to find an investment property. Maybe they're downsizing. You think of it. What are the reasons why somebody's moving? And then I got to ask those questions. So, hey, I'm curious. You said you're moving from Puyallup to the north end of Seattle, but I know a lot of people who don't move. They make that commute. Why is that important to you? And the guy says, well, it's just a lot of time out of my day. And I say, give me an example. I mean, be more specific. How long are we talking about? Oh, like an hour and a half each way. And I'm like, oh, is that a long time? He goes, heck yeah, that's a long time. I mean, well, how long have you been making this commute? Well, I've been making this commute for 6 months already. Oh, so what else have you done? Have you looked into taking light rail, or maybe work from home solutions? Well, no, my employer doesn't offer a remote option, and light rail's too far away. I can't get there. Oh, okay. So I'm just curious. How much does it cost you? Not just in gas going back and forth, because we could figure that out, right? But how much does that cost you in personal relationships with you and your wife and your kids, of you having this 3-hour commute? And I'm guessing when you come back, sometimes you're a little crabby, and I bet sometimes it takes more than 3 hours, doesn't it? Oh yeah, it certainly does. Tell me about that. When's the last time you got stuck in traffic? I just had a 5-minute conversation about somebody's really important, and your question was, oh, really? So are you pre-approved? Who's winning this business? You or me? Trust me, me. Because your next question was, what area do you want to live in? What neighborhood do you want to be in? And I'm still talking about how they missed their daughter's dance recital, and they don't want that to happen again. And then I get to look at penetrating questions. So, how does that make you feel when you get stuck in traffic and you couldn't make it to your daughter's dance recital? How'd that make you feel in heart as a father? Man, that's horrible, dude. I never want to have that again. Can I make a suggestion, Bob? What's that? Why don't you find your way down to my office tomorrow at 3:00? We'll sit down. We'll do a full consultation. We can talk about, what it's going to be like to get you into your next home. But more importantly, we can talk about blah, 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 blah. So you change in tonality. See, I got to have a lot of connecting words too, a lot of connecting questions. And here's a chart that I use here that I work with a lot of people. This is what we call softening and reversing. So when I get from one question to the next, I can't just say, so why do you want to move? Do you have a high commute? What's your daughter think? No, I got to use a tonality. I got to ask a question. Help me understand, Bob. I mean, how did your daughter feel when you weren't able to get there? And as a father, man, that's tough, bro. I mean, tell me about that circumstance, dude. How upset was she? See, you're worried that if you ask that question, you might make them mad. I'm worried if I don't ask that question, I'm not going to get to the sale. You're worried about getting mad. I'm worried about helping this guy with his problem. You're worried about whether your ego might get bruised. I'm worried about whether or not I'm going to be able to help him with this problem, and then he's going to be able to refer me his coworkers who also have a problem. You're worried about yourself. I'm worried about helping people. Quit worrying about yourself. Quit worrying about whether somebody might be mad. Quit worrying about you might ask a penetrating question that went too far. If you have to ask a penetrating question that went too far, then use a technique and simply ask them, hey, how can I ask you a tough penetrating question that might go too far? One of the best ways to get people connected at a pain level is to use pain-oriented questions. I ask questions and use terms like frustrated, upset, depressed, worried, angry, concerned, anxious. We have a little acronym for this called FUDWACA. Frustrated, upset, depressed, worried, angry, concerned, anxious. You want to get people in an emotional conversation? Use emotional-based words. Hey, Bill, tell me about that commute for you. I bet it's frustrating. Hey, when you missed that time with your daughter, how did that make you feel? Were you upset? Were you angry? I talk to a lot of people just like you, Bill, and when they tell me they have this long concern and a long commute, they're really concerned about the impact on the environment. Man, is that a concern for you? I really appreciate you sharing with me, Bill, about that story you told me about you and your daughter and missing that. And I mean, are you anxious at all that problem may continue if we don't make some changes here and quick? See, if you want to get people emotionally connected, which is how you're gonna connect with them, then you need to use these types of words in your vocabulary on a regular basis. You need to have lots of softening statements. You can't just say, well, that's a good question, Bill. That's a good question. Hey, that's a good question. Excellent question. You know what that says? It says you're an amateur and you're not listening. Hey, I'm glad you asked me that, Bill. Man, you know what? I really appreciate that. That's a great observation. Not a lot of people say that, Bill. You know what? That's the first time I've heard that in a while. I'm curious. When you said you was angry, I mean, what did you really mean? You seem to have a lot of experience in that area, Bill. I mean, where does that come from? Tell me more about that. Those are all fantastic questions that are going to show that you are intently listening, that you're intently connected, that you're building truth and intimacy with somebody else, and you're no longer just a robot going down some, LP Mama script, which there's nothing wrong with LP Mama, but if you're reading it LPMMMA and just going straight through that, you're missing a huge opportunity to connect with this person at a level that your competitors are not. You're worried about what color my logo is, and you go on a Facebook group and you post 5 different, names for your company and which one is the best and how am I going to differentiate myself. And then you get on the phone and you act and sound exactly like every other of the 10,000 agents that live in your community. You want to get more business. You want to be more relatable. You want to have more responsive conversations. Stop acting, sounding, and looking like all these other robots that are out there. What you need to be able to do is learn to be relational and learn how to communicate at a base emotional level. And most of us are too scared because we're worried that somebody might not like us. Well, you know what? You can't feed your family with a need for approval. You're going to have some skinny kids and you're going to have a bunch of ex-wives, right? Or husbands. Your need for approval has got to be put to the side. You've got to sit there and say, you know what? The tough question I need to ask right now is probably the best one. I need to find a way to ask it. And you can use great softening statements. You can use great reverses. And you can say to yourself, you know what? That is an important question. I am financially independent, even when I'm not, and I'm going to ask it because it's material to this thing right now. I see agents all the time that have deals fall apart because they haven't asked the tough questions. People back out on a deal because you've never got to the emotional base level with them about why it's important for them to do something. If it's always on the surface, it's going to be an easy way to step out of it. You want to make sure your deals really go through, especially on the buy side, but even on the listing side. Get connected to those people at another level to where they feel like they can really be honest with you. They can tell you what's really happening, because the sooner they can tell you that, the more quickly they're honest with you, the easier you can find solutions to their problems, which is a lot easier than finding a new buyer for that listing or finding a new house for that buyer. Selling is an interaction between two people. In order to really hit our stride as a sales professional, you really need to learn to focus on the needs and the priorities of your prospect. People buy for their own reasons, not your reasons. Everyone has a plan. And like the great philosopher Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. You need to learn to be nimble. You need to listen for opportunities, and you need to find and then close on pain. The only way you're ever going to find the prospect's pain is by engaging them in a conversation around their reasons. It's not about your reasons to qualify, your need to find out what neighborhood they want to live in, whether they're pre-approved or whether or not they already got an agent, which is important. All those things are important. You need to find them out, but they are superseded by my need to stay connected directly with this client and this prospect. The way you're going to do that, be relational, be responsible, listen more than you talk, and make sure you stay focused on their needs.
I love it, man. Good stuff, man. And right there at the top of the hour, I mean, it really does just boil down to the quality of the answers that you're going to be able to extract are going to be off the quality of the questions that you can ask. Like I love that. And I can remember when you and I were just getting going, you were asking me, man, where did you learn the pleasure and pain theory stuff from? Because I was already practicing it. And, a lot of those different, we'll just say principles, I picked up, by paying, for other courses and just staying a student of the game. But you were like, there's a whole framework around it. Right. And, being able to learn more about that framework, from you over the years has been huge. And I love the 70-30, like for me, just to give you some tips and tricks, when I go to ask a question, even when I'm on a sales call or recruiting call or with buyers and sellers or whatever, and I ask that first, like, we'll just say emotional question where I know I'm going to get a good response. It's open-ended question, so I'm not getting a yes or a no. I will mute myself because I'll find myself wanting to ask another question or interrupt. And so I've muted myself before, and then I went to go ask them a question, or you could even go to cut them off or whatever. And that mute button has helped me. And it's like, oh, they're not even hearing me because I'm muted. And then they just keep talking. And then I let them roll versus if I would have interrupted them or whatever. And so, little things like that, at least when I'm on the phone, like phone selling, that had helped me over the years where I'd ask a question, but you want to ask more questions or follow up questions when they're not done explaining or articulating themselves with the first one, had been, I just over the years where it's like I had to, work in little like things like that to not interrupt them or not ask another question and to give them more, of that talk time. Yeah. Another tool that I've been using on Zooms to track this because I get in present mode a lot, right? And it can easily be well over the 30% that you were referencing, the category I need to be in. And so there's an app that you can snap on to even Zoom, and it's called Read, and it documents my meetings, the sentiment, all types of different emotions. Obviously you get the transcripts and it breaks it down into highlights and, all type, anything you can want about the call, and the AI pieces tied into it. But it tracks how long you talk and how long each person talks. And if you're going to use it, we'll just say in a sales capacity or a presenting or closing capacity, like we talked about, that app has really helped me. It's like, man, I need to probably talk 10% less or whatever, because you see it in these percentages or you hear it, but what type of tools or things like that have you incorporated to gauge or scale if you're doing a good job or a bad job, you know what I mean? And so,
well, we mentioned that, most of my focus here, we were talking about buyers and sellers, but you can take everything I just said and apply it obviously directly to, an agent attraction phone call too.
Right.
We get this thing where we want to tell them all about, EXP, but what we really need to do is find out what they're unhappy with and why they're even having a conversation right now. It makes a lot of sense why you would be doing more heavy presenting, because what a lot of times is you're talking to somebody from upline capacity, and a lot of that other work's already been done, and your role there is. But if we take that and we, your role in that particular conversation is a much heavier presenting side, because a lot of that other work has already been done before it got to that meeting where now you're there to tell them the stuff.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of truth to that for sure, without a doubt. And obviously I play, as all of you guys do as a CEO of your company, outside of maybe just main KPIs that drive it, you find yourself in all types of different influencing or sales roles in your organization, for sure. And so, especially in a time of need where things are, we'll just say there's a lot of uncertainty and things like that. And so I like what you had touched on, and I don't know if people picked up on this, but I talk about this all the time, and it's really underrated. A lot of people think the way that they build rapport is by talking, or, presenting, or, storytelling, or, whatever it may be. But in reality, the deepening of the rapport and the connection is coming from the authenticity of the active listening. And when you're listening to someone, you're actually building more rapport than you are if you are speaking, right?
Yeah,
In terms of that.
I like to look at it like a date. I mean, everybody's had that first date, right? And you go out with
Yeah.
somebody and you know, what makes it a good date? A good date is when there's an interaction and the other person is generally interested in what you have to say, or you know, everybody's been on those ones with the other person, all they did was talk the whole time. That doesn't
Right.
make you ever want to go out with them again. It's like, I can't sit through that again. No way. Right. So it's a lot like that. The best ones are the ones where there's an interaction and both people get to equally engage.
Right. I like it, man. Good stuff. I look forward to having you on more, Monday, mastermind series stuff. I know that you got a lot on your plate getting ramped back up here with us. And I know you got a month or so back or whatever with EXP. And I know you traveled out to Washington to visit, Grayson, one of your other sons that works in the call center there with Club Wealth and, all that stuff. And so I felt like this was a good Monday to have you back. I know last Monday we were supposed to go live, but a lot of people were at build and still we're going to have it, but they changed my flight and I had a layover. And so I appreciate you being able to work with a schedule change here to push you guys back. Hopefully you guys, found this somewhat intriguing. If you've never heard about the pleasure of pain theory, I love the dummy curve, and like all the stuff tied back into, like what it takes to be we'll just say a top agent expert, icon agent, and, really, basically get in front of people. You hit the nail on the head. Like you said, 100 appointments. It's like, that doesn't impress me. What does is the quality, of that conversation and your show up confirm rate, because that's the only thing that matters. Like how many people are you getting in front of, how many listings are you picking up, how many buyer agencies, so on and so forth. And so, I love that you had mentioned all that stuff. Mark, how can, people find you? Are you a Facebook guy, Instagram, TikTok? I mean,
I'm around, I'm here and there. I mean, I got so many different accounts. Usually the easiest way is to find me, is Mark Benefiel on Facebook. I mean, I think I'm on Instagram at Mark Sells ICT or Mark Sells Kansas. And I'm in other places too, but I'm usually you find me in one of those two places.
all right, guys, connect with Mark. And I promise you'll love his dry sense of humor if you got a dry sense of humor, because you won't know if he's kidding or for real. You have to read it twice probably to figure it out. But that's why a majority of sales is through the body language, 55%, so but I'm glad we got the first one out of the way, Mark. You got any other maybe final partings of shots? You guys know how to find him on Facebook, gave his Instagram handle out.
My the biggest part of my day, man, is what really drives me and gets me excited is when people are vulnerable enough to say, you know what, I can get better. Even the best can get better, and the best people are always getting better. So just because you did X number last year doesn't mean you couldn't do more this year. I mean, you can always get better, and it's that constant drive. Those are the ones that I really get excited about, because somebody who doesn't want to get any better, I ain't no time for them.
All right. Well, no, I like it. It's like continuous improvement. I mean, I'm looking how to up my game every single year where I can get better. I know that you are as well. Guys, we're going to have Mark on here maybe for a part 2. We're running a little bit late. I want to respect his time and all of our time. But I'm sure we'll have Mark on again. Hopefully you guys appreciate us having us back on the 2% Monday Mastermind series. Mark, I appreciate you, man. Much love. Look forward to doing this more often with you and getting you ramped back up with us, man. I love you and I appreciate your time. And everybody else, make it a great Monday. Just do it.
See ya.
Later.